I'm going to count from 10, and then I'm calling security. Sir, you're not supposed to go down there.
But you drifted off the wall.
I'm getting security.
I'm not leaving until you cancel my account.
This isn't going to end like you imagined. Security is policy for customers like you.
Hi everyone, welcome back. Our fourth film, Broadband Service Provider, was shot in central London for less than £500. Let's talk about how we did that, how you can do that, and what lessons you can take from our production to use for your next production. Let's also discuss why the best ideas happen after you've planned everything out carefully and allow them to come in during the production time. So let's jump right into the fourth film, Broadband Service Provider. Broadband Service Provider is a quintessential film of a man trying to reclaim his power from an ever less human world that he lives in. There have been many films in the past that have dealt with this theme, but the way that we decided to approach this is through a comedic lens of dealing with a broadband service customer representative. And in our story, the main character, Jake Goodman, decides to track down and approach the customer service representative in his office, the person who refused to cancel his broadband over the phone. As the story progresses, we find out that it's not just about the broadband, there's issues with his marriage as well. And in such a way, we discuss themes of power, not only as it relates to your broadband service, but also as it relates to your relationships with others. And so what's distinctly different about this production and how we approached it in comparison to our previous productions is that this was the first time I managed to work with a DOP that knew exactly what he was doing, and he was able to take my hand and lead me along from the very pre-production stages to the post-production stages. And you can clearly see that in the visual quality of the film and the professionalism that comes across from the screen. And contrary to my previous idea, I found out through this production that preparation does not kill spontaneity. In fact, it makes it more possible to be spontaneous and in the moment if you know exactly what you're doing. Also, if you've been paying attention to our previous films, you'll see that this is the first time that the film doesn't look like a student project. Let's discuss the most interesting part of this video, and that's how we managed to make this film in central London for just £500. You must be saying, hold on, that's not possible. £500? Central London? No way. And I'm going to tell you, it is possible, and this is how we did it. So if you've ever made a short film, especially an indie short film, you must be thinking, location is the most expensive thing that I always spend money on. How did you get a location for under £500 in central London? And this is where you have to start thinking outside the box. So instead of just approaching random locations that look good for our film, what I decided to do is to look to societies that I'm a part of. And I assume that people listening are also part of different societies, different groups, and you can always reach out to different people. So what I did specifically, because I'm part of a dance society, I reached out specifically to a dance organization that is based in central London, and I asked whether they were possibly open to collaboration. I didn't specify whether this was a dance movie or anything like that, and if you've seen the film, you clearly know this is not a dance film. However, I presented it as a dancer making a movie. In this way, I was able to secure a location in central London for just £100. And of course, that £100 is just a nominal fee for them to say that they've rented the space. But in reality, what happens is, if you're able to approach a group that feels that they can relate to you, or they feel like they should help out because you belong to their group, they will be much more willing to help you out. So we got a location for just £100. We had £400 left to spare. And as you guessed it, we used it very well to get this whole production working. So one more thing that you might be concerned when shooting in central London is, of course, the branding and the signage across entire London, because it's abundant there, and it can be difficult to hide this or to not show it. And if you do show it, you may be liable to pay. It's not like a small indie film can request money to promote a specific brand. So how do you get across this? Obviously, you don't have the money in the budget to pay for these brands. What's really important is to hide these either through camera trickery or through literally placing objects in front of those signs. But this is how we avoided it. So in our shot, we have a big logo at the front entrance, but what we did is we zoomed into the camera into the main receptionist area, so you can't really see it. We've also placed plants to hide the signs and the brands across this space that we had. Thankfully for us, the location that we had a lot of big pots with big plants in, so we could really move them around to hide anything we didn't want to show. So throughout the production, we kind of kept moving the plants from one place to another to hide different posts, different brands. Then your next concern must be, hey, I can ask a friend or a society to lend me a space, but it doesn't look at all like what I need or what I want for my production. And really, what I have to say about this is that when you're working with a very limited budget and you're an indie short filmmaker, you don't have the luxury to get any space that you want. What you should do instead is to see what space you're able to get and then adjust your script accordingly. In this way, the limitations actually foster creativity in your script, as well as how the cinematographer adjusts and what choices you're able to make. So you can probably already guess that I had a script before we got the location, but once we got the location approved, I had to go back to the script and change different parts of the script to work with the location that we had. So never be stuck with the script that you first write, always be willing to adjust, and this way you'll be able to keep the budget within your means. One more thing you might be able to tell from this production is that there's not only a lot of props used, but there's also a lot of background extras just walking around. And how do we hire these people to just walk around to interact with our film, especially if we have no money? So let's talk about the props first. In terms of the props, what we used mostly is just items from our individual houses. My house, the actor's house, the crew's house. We literally just brought in what we had and used for the film. We paid £0 for any of the props that you see on the film. The computer that's used is the crew's computer, same with the phone, same with the items that you used by the receptionist. In terms of background extras, if you pay close attention, there's 6 extras in this film. 1 inside the office and 5 outside. So how do we hire 6 people if we have no money? Great question. Obviously, the one inside the building needs permission. So we didn't hire that person. That person is from the crew. And if you notice the very beginning of the film, as well as the extra in the building, you will see that it's the same extra. In terms of people outside, because it's a public space, you don't actually need permission to film them. We just allowed the citizens of London to live their lives, and we use them as a scenery. And this is how we got around paying these specific people. And hey, one of them might be you, so if you find yourself in our movie, do get in contact. So remember, a lot of the things in indie film production is about cheating. And what's important is to reframe your thinking instead of, oh, I'm compromising. You have to think of, oh, I'm being creative with what I have. Because really, otherwise, you're not going to be able to make a movie.
Well, like I told you, we have a 30-day cancellation policy, and you need to return the router.
As I mentioned before, the big difference between this production and our other previous productions is that I finally got to work with a DOP from the very beginning of pre-production all the way to post-production. And this really transformed the film and how we handled the whole situation. What was amazing about this production was that from the very beginning, I was on the same page with my DOP, who is of course my right-hand man. So what we decided to do is, first of all, as part of pre-production, is to watch previous films that have sort of dealt with similar themes or similar visuals as what we were trying to achieve. So we watched things like Death of a Telemarketer or Sorry to Bother You or All About Schmidt. Movies like this that informed how we were going to shoot this film and how we were going to explore the themes in our film. After that, what we did was we picked scenes from those movies that looked visually representative of the style that we wanted to go for, but also thematically expressive of what we wanted to say. And once we've had this sort of collage of different screenshots from other movies, we went into the storyboarding. So the way we approached it is we picked a through line from the very beginning of the script to the end and used shots from different movies that seemed to express that. And we basically copied and pasted the approach in their visual language to ours. And if you've seen movies that I've mentioned before, like Death of a Telemarketer, All About Schmidt, Sorry to Bother You, you will see the distinct choices that we've sort of copied, pasted, that we've stolen from those previous movies. Now, the next thing was to, of course, adapt what we initially wanted to the space we had, as I had already mentioned. So it was important to see how we could stage those shots that we had already in our minds in the space that was provided. And this is where blocking came in. We kind of had to adjust with a spatial aerial view of the whole situation, how each character would move to achieve the visual language that we want to go for in the space that we had. And one thing, if you are incredibly detailed and watch the movie with precision, you will see that in fact, when Jake goes after the broadband customer service provider, we cheat the space in such a way to make it look like the office is bigger. But what we really do is we just turn the camera and pretend like he's going from one direction and appearing from another. So in reality, the space that we had is much smaller than what it looks like on the camera. It looks like the hallway that he goes through extends all the way to where he finally confronts the customer service rep. While in reality, what we did is we cut the shot as Jake goes off camera, and then we just put him in a closet next to it, and we had him emerge on the next shot to cut in between those two shots. What's important is that this sort of preparation is what allowed for spontaneity on set. I had initially thought that to be spontaneous on set, you just need to let go of all preparation and explore in the space. But with this film, what I really found out is that if you really do your preparation correctly and fully, you will feel the freedom to explore because you know the limitations that you're working within. So a great example of this is the moment when the customer service rep takes out his phone to play a game on his phone as Jake goes out to get his computer and come back in. We of course had the space in the script where the customer service rep is too intimidated to leave, but we wanted to sort of push the envelope further. And what Jake the actor, not Jake the character, but the customer service rep actor, actually suggested in the moment is that maybe he doesn't even care about this job. Maybe the fact that he gets kidnapped every day is normal to him. So he just subverts the expectation of the audience, and instead of trying to call the police or something, he just starts playing a video game on his phone. And because we knew what came before and what comes after, we were able to integrate this into our film, and I think that really elevated the message that we were trying to put across. I think this further emphasized the sort of absurd rhythm and tone we were going for, specifically starting to write the script from the perspective of the actor of our main character. Because I knew him as a person and I knew what his personality is like, I tried to express this from the script. So to summarize all of this, previously what I used to think is that directing was all about preparing everything perfectly beforehand and executing it. And really what this film allowed me to discover, it's not quite so simple. Really what directing is to me now is, yes, prepare as much as you can, know what you're going to do. But this preparation is so that it can serve you to feel free in the production process, to make the choices you want to make, to be spontaneous on set, to listen to your actors and your crew, and to allow the best sort of choices to come out in the moment. Because these choices can only come out if you know exactly what's going on.
And I don't want anything from you.
I'm sorry, sir, but we can't just cancel it. There needs to be an unwind.
The concept of this film actually comes from my personal experience dealing with a broadband service provider, not so subtly masked in our film as Sturgeon Media Group. And this sort of need that we all must feel when talking to customer service representatives, that we just want to grab them and shake them a little bit and to talk to them like real human beings. And this frustration is exemplified in our movie as Jake confronts this customer service rep in person, which is really not supposed to be done in polite society. So of course that's part of it, but really it's just the need to take back control and to feel like you have some autonomy in your life, not only as it relates to your broadband, but your relationships as well. And what I particularly found challenging with this film is that, unlike previous films, I had to accommodate the script to 3 characters' interactions. So I kept asking myself, how do I keep their voices distinct as I write the script through their dialogue? And what I found through the writing was that the best approach to this was to really lean into the tropes of the characters. We of course have Jake, who's the everyman, so I kept him as sort of natural as I could. And then I had the receptionist, who is supposed to be as blasé as possible. Nothing phases her. And then we have the customer service rep. He just seems to be okay with the system, and he wants everything done by the system. And I wanted to express this not only from his physicality, but also from his words.
Well, sir, to me, sounds like you're eligible for a better deal. And you're currently
So to bring it all back, what this film is about, not only in themes, but also how we approach this production, is that resourcefulness is our philosophy. It doesn't matter what you have, it matters how you justify it in the story. So let's take a look at some of the props that we have in the film. Let's take a look at the coffee cup that the service rep holds. That's mine from the house. Let's take a look at the broadband service router that Jake takes out, again, from my house. And so on and so forth. Everything you see in this film is reused from me or somebody else. So you can do that too, just to save money and to make your productions happen. Don't feel like you have the right to create excuses for why you can't do that because it's too expensive. There's always ways around to get around these problems. And remember, every film is a stress test of your resourcefulness. What can you think of to make it cheaper? What can you think of not only to make it cheaper, but also to make it more visually stunning? Sometimes the choices that we feel like we are pushed to make end up more visually interesting to the audience. And that's the paradox that you have to work with. Sometimes something you cook up in your head when you're sitting at home and you think it's going to be great is not as great as something that you find out through the sheer fact of being broke. So next time you're making a film and you need a prop, don't go out and buy it. Take something from your house and use it. Take something from somebody else's house and use it. Hey, worst case scenario, rewrite the script to not use that prop. In documentary film, we learn this phrase, killing your babies. It's probably not just in documentary, it's in all film, killing your babies. But this also applies to script choices, to character choices, to prop choices, applies to everything. You really have to be able to let go of choices you've made in a vacuum to accommodate the real world and where you're actually shooting.
To 100 megabits per second.
I didn't come here for a better deal. I came here to cancel my...
I really hope you enjoyed Broadband Service Provider. It's a film that I'm really proud of and I'm really happy that I got to make it. A lot of people's hard work went into making it and I hope you watch it. And what I personally learned from it is that preparing is not the end of it, but the beginning of creativity. So really what you have to do is to prepare as much as you can beforehand and then allow yourself to let go of that preparation in the production process to see what comes out. And also, of course, that constraints are just an amplification of your creativity. If you allow constraints to work with you, not against you, you can see a whole new world of possibilities that you can implement into your next film. And here's our little challenge to you that I hope you can play along with, is that for the next film that we do and we discuss, you will see that the budget will stay the same, but hopefully the look and the feel of the film will feel more expensive and more expansive. And that's because through this process we've learned to use and utilize anything that we can to make the production cheap, but also to make it interesting and visually stunning.